Folks, today we're having a panel, and we've called it the low-code journey in government. And so when we thought through what we were going to do in the two sessions that we have, we've kind of broken it up. So in this session, the thing we're going to talk about is we've got 3 customers, and they're at varying points in their experiences in doing low-code projects. So we've got June from the state of Vermont, and she has been doing this for a number of years. She's got some experience under her belt. We've got Roy, who's just started, and they've actually just deployed an app in the last couple of months. And then we've got Hilmar from FDA, and they have just really embarked on this journey of doing lots of projects on the Appian platform and some of the things that they're thinking through as they go through that journey. And so what we'll do is I've got a couple of slides to set this up, and I promise it's not a lot of slides. And then we'll go right into some Q&A while I'll ask the panelists some of their thoughts. And then if we have some time at the end, we certainly take some thoughts from the audience as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So just quickly, very quickly, our agenda for the panel today. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things being Appian in the public sector. And then again, we're going to go talk through some of the success stories that we have here with the customers. We'll have a discussion, and then again, we'll have a Q&A at the end. The first slide that I wanted to talk about is really what are we about? And so we can come and we can sit you in the general sessions, and you could listen to Matt Calkins talk about features and functions, and you can learn about how to build stuff. But you know, a little bit about my journey. I was an Appian customer, and I was an Appian partner, and now I'm an Appian employee. And so I know one of the hardest things that we do is trying to position Appian and sell Appian within our own organization. So we've made an investment, and so how do we communicate that? And this space has gotten very crowded. The low-code space has gotten hot, and so there are a lot of vendors, and even vendors that don't do low-code call themselves low-code or call a portion of their product low-code so that they can compete in a space that again is quite hot. So what have we decided to do from a company perspective is we've decided to focus on the challenging stuff. So where does Appian fit into the low-code spectrum? And that's really when things get complicated. When there are heavy rules, when there are heavy business processes, that's when agencies are turning to Appian to do things that are very mission critical. And you'll hear some of those stories today. You'll also hear some of those stories on our panel tomorrow at 11 with GSA and Federal Transit Administration. The other thing I wanted to show, and I promise this is the only other slide I have, is what company you're keeping. So if you've never actually done one of my briefings, most people don't know what our public sector customer list looks like. And so we don't break this down, kind of sub-levels of some of the cabinet level agencies, but the list is pretty extensive. And if I was to go through, and the folks from Appian know this, I mean, I could probably talk for 6 hours about the use cases, but these are mission system customers. So most of our customers that you see on this list have joined the kind of Appian ecosystem, doing something complicated, doing something hard. And then yes, do we do some things that might be easier and we pick up little things here and there? Absolutely. But we're really focusing on solving some of the more complicated missions that our customers see. So again, I wanted to just show that just so that you understand kind of the breadth of those relationships and folks obviously in the room here. So let's go ahead and I want to do some introductions. And what we're going to do first is each of our panelists is going to describe in a couple of minutes what they're doing and where they are in that journey. And then I've got a series of questions that I have that we've come up with that we'll ask them, allow them to kind of go back and forth. And then obviously if you have some questions in the audience, we'll go from there. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with June because she has been doing this. She's been at this the longest. And so June, would you just introduce yourself and tell us kind of what you're doing with Appian and where you are?
Hi, everyone. We started in 2007, and we started primarily focusing on business process management. We knew that if we could start there, we really wanted a transformational path. Our processes and our infrastructure is so old that we really knew we had to do something big. So the first 5 years, we focused on business process management as a discipline. Then we added, and we did maybe 200-300 workflows, and we studied, we did so much to bring the users and the SMEs along. Then we started a project, we did a pilot, 2 years, less than 9 months to develop, and then less than a year to implement as well. Wildly successful. I'll probably speak to that a little bit more, but Right after we stopped that, we started a second application, and this was, we're about 100% done with the development, 90% implemented. No kidding, it's like a 50, 60-year-old process that has no technology, has never been supported with any kind of technology. It's so dysfunctional, it was a bottleneck, and it was on a mission, it was on the critical path of our core project delivery process. So it's the process by which we deliver pavement, bridges, culverts, all our infrastructure. 45 people work in it. So that was, the legacy technology that we had on that was carbon copies. People were still referring to yellow sheets, green sheets, pink sheets, and wouldn't give them up. Okay, so that just gives you an idea. So the successful part of that, what the low code brought to the table, was for us to be able to take users and SMEs that were really in the Stone Age. And because what we did was we met with them weekly, and we were able to prototype and take them from that concept, I have no idea what you're talking about, to start validating design. Because they also had to give us the information to write the specs to be able to go forward. So we spent an enormous amount of time, but we could not have done that without like a low code. It would, they were afraid we were gonna do like old school with just drop an application when it was done at the end, and then they would have to adapt to it. So this was we got a lot of buy-in. With UAT was wonderful. We didn't have to train them. And then what it did is it set us up for this marvelous being able to optimize, to put them into the mindset where they were like, wow, we can optimize and enhance moving forward. We built that incredible relationship. We spent a lot of time doing that. We got the trust that we needed, and then that set up the success that we had afterwards.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Roy?
Hi, thank you. So I'm with NOAA Fisheries, and we are the oldest conservation agency in U.S., 1871, so we've been around a long time. And our business is to make sure that the marine life that you're familiar with, the turtles and the dolphins and the whales, are around for the next millennia. It doesn't disappear, right? And that the seafood we enjoy are sustainably developed and harvested, so we will have enough food to eat for the next millennia. So that's a big part of our core part of our mission. So we've been doing this for a while in terms of how to do conservation and management of the natural resources. But very similar to you, June, we're also, because of our legacy, we have a lot of manual processes, and we have a lot of collaboration that is needed between agencies. So before your state highway gets built or a bridge gets built, there needs to be collaboration between our agency that assesses what kind of impact that project will have on the ecosystem and the species that are under management, and the agency that is doing the construction. And if it's a dam, Army Corps of Engineers have to collaborate with us. EPA has to collaborate with us. Right now, that collaboration, I shouldn't say right now, right now that collaboration happens via documents, emailed, and people calling. And if we have to answer to somebody from the Hill saying, how long does it take for that consultation process to go through the system, we can tell you how long we are supposed to take based on the laws. But we cannot accurately tell you how long each of them take because our processes were so fragmented. So September of last year is when our local journey with Appian started, where we were on this ambitious plan to get a new workflow process to solve this consultation workflow issue solved in 120 days. We said 120 days, we want it in production. Building an app on a local platform, as you all heard today, it's doable. In 8 weeks is what the guarantee was. But to have it production ready and deployed in the federal sector, including cybersecurity component baked on and ATO signed, ATO is authority to operate. In 90 days or 120 days is mission impossible, so I was told. But we got it done. We got it done, and we were ready to launch December 31st, and then the shutdown happened.
We count actual project days, not duration of the project, right?
So guess what? I'm still saying we were ready in 120 days. We were ready in 90 days. We launched shortly after we came back from our lapse in appropriation. And we are in production right now. We're on phase 2 of that project right now and looking forward to many more successes.
And Hilmar, if you wouldn't mind just kind of letting us know what you're doing?
So my name is Hilmar Hamann. So I sit in the Center for Drugs at FDA, and I work with an office that's focused on business informatics. So we support all the business applications that support the Human Drug Review Program, from the drug development phase, pre-market review, and post-market surveillance. So it's a big scope, and we have a lot of newer systems, older systems, and as Jason said, we're embarking on a big, challenging journey here. FDA has experience with Appian for a number of years. I think there's currently 5 implementations in production across 3 centers. We have 5 more in the pipeline. We're working on those. So over the next 12 months, we're planning to double the number of use cases. But I think I wanted to just talk a little bit about what I see as the challenge for us moving forward, because we're really looking at a very comprehensive implementation of all the processes that support the Human Drug Review Program. So I can easily see that we get from the 5 use cases to the 10, and then we go to the 50 in just a couple of years. So we need to plan ahead. And we have about 200,000 regulatory submissions every year that we receive. We call them maybe the cases, right, that we receive. We have dozens of people involved in the review of these cases. And these cases have up to 50 to 100 tasks. So you can easily talk about 10 to 20 million tasks every year. And these stay open in some cases for 10 months because the review process takes a while, and inspections have to happen, reviews have to happen. So things need to be in order before we can make a decision on whether to approve a drug or not. So I see a lot of interesting challenges, and the scale. We need to, as we talked yesterday in the CXO summit, one of the gentlemen said, we need to spend a lot of time on talking about the how, not just about the what, right? So, and that is what keeps me awake at night to think about what is that implementation model. How do we have reusable components? How do we have teams focus on those while we have other teams really focus on the customer and allocating these reusable components in the most efficient way? So, that's, and then we talked about architecture services, and we're working closely with you guys to figure out, how do we make this scalable for the future?
So a couple of things. First, in no bit of irony, we can thank Roy for making sure that the fish that we ate last night were sustainably caught, and we can thank Hilmar to make sure that we are not sick today from eating all the food that you ate last night. So one of the things, and one of the reasons we asked Hilmar to join us is, they've actually set up a pretty significant governance operation at FDA in order to make sure that they're planning forward for a lot of the things that they do. And so we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. I wanted to go back to June. So one of the things that we've always been interested when we've had June speak and work with us is they actually did an ROI study. They had a third party come in and do an ROI study. And for most of us who've done work in the government, find me an ROI study, right? So they actually did that. And if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple of minutes and explain what you did and kind of what was the outcome of that.
Sure. So for every project over $1 million in the state of Vermont, you need to have an IR. So we spent the money to do that, and basically they just came in and they did it, and I just provided all the information. But one of the So the results of that were tremendous. Remember, I said that our processes are so dysfunctional. So the trick is that if you're really producing a lot of value, it's going to show up in an ROI. The 50-year-old, 60-year-old process was so inefficient, it was like a no-brainer. We knew it was going to provide a good ROI. So I asked particularly, we didn't need to gild the lily, to do it as conservative, all the numbers as possible, and make it as simple as possible. So what they did, we have 45 people in that particular process. And what we basically did an ROI, we just measured the efficiency that they would all, that we could reap, that we could harvest from an end to end. And we did it, we started out with 25% and we did the calculations up to 55%. Well, almost out of the box, we're getting 65. So even that, right, we're talking that these were understated. And before I tell you exactly what the ROI, I'll say that these projects were funded by innovation grants from the federal system. So in Vermont, we have an 80-20, we have the 20 match. So 80% was funded through federal dollars, 20% state match. So when we did the ROI, we did it overall, which was a 1 to 9. So for both of my projects over a 20-year period, the overall ROI, now the private sector would be crazy with $1 you give us for the investment, you get $9 back over a 20-year period. That's really great. Well, for the state dollars, for only the 20%, it was a 1 to 50. And
That's why we have June speaking up here.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. Now I'm not sure that we'll get that with every process, but I know that we have a lot more processes that are that dysfunctional in our agency, let alone across our state.
So again, this is why it was interesting to us to see somebody who'd actually gone through the process of doing that level of quantification, and so. I know a lot of our customers, a lot of our agencies don't do that, but now that you've gone through and done a project, what do you see as the benefit? Certainly there's some financial benefits, but what's the real benefit?
So our agency have probably close to 300 plus applications, and the reason why I'm saying 300 plus is because I don't know. I'm the CIO. The number changes because some of the work, most of the work in our agency happens in the field sites. We have 40 locations, including one in La Jolla that Heather and her Drew over here works for. So a lot of work happens in the field. They solve the problems at the field as quick as possible, as when it pops up. We have the opportunity at the federal, at the headquarters level, provide the platform to help them get to market faster. So the promise of the low-code platform is that folks who have the ability to establish standards and processes, at least at the very minimum, provide the governance overlay, security overlay, acquisitions overlay, so that the software development team, the business folks who need actual business problem solved, can get to work solving those, articulating the value, and actually implementing and realize the 8-week promise that the low-code platforms are providing. Otherwise, everybody will be solving their problems one at a time, possibly on different platforms, possibly on the same platforms with different objects, and we don't have interoperability as we should.
Have there been any unexpected benefits? Things you didn't expect that have come out of your project?
Well, I don't want to say unexpected, but I think a positive a benefit that we didn't really plan to get, but we have, is that if you're like any traditional IT organization, there is a chasm between the IT organization and the business. There is some level of wall or chasm. There's disconnect. I think when you engage in this type of a project, a digital transformation project, where you're really integrated, working together, you start realizing that both sides aren't crazy. Right? Because we have this perception as the business side is crazy, or the business side thinks the IT folks, all they care about is X, Y, and Z. They're speaking two different languages. But when we're working together, we're actually solving the problem that matters. And then you realize, we're just human beings trying to solve problems, and we like each other. So we've actually, go figure that out. It's like we actually like each other. We hang out together. So that is, I think, at a human level, that is the best outcome that we could hope for. But we didn't plan for it. We were solving a problem.
Fair enough. And so Hilmar, I've been fortunate enough to spend a good deal of time with FDA, and I've been impressed with just what exists in Hilmar's infrastructure that they've created. And so what I'd ask you, Hilmar, is going into this, what would you hope are the benefits to go through this? Because you've put in a lot of effort into the back end that you have, and I'll just be honest, like a lot of the work that they've done on the OBI platform today is directly transferable into what we're now going to do. So we're not ripping out all the stuff that they've built. We're just now augmenting some of the stuff to give some additional capabilities. So I'd love to hear, what are your thoughts going forward?
Yeah, so thank you. I would agree. I think we have a good starting point. We have a set of very strategic capabilities from the electronic submission side, how we intake and validate, process all these submissions, the integrated data management, and then our business intelligence capability is very mature. So for us to figure out is how does Appian complement, right? And and what's the value Appian can bring. And I think what I see as one of the biggest benefits, which is very obvious, is it allows us to much closer collaborate with the medical officers, the reviewers, the scientific staff on developing the solutions. And that's something we have not been able to do before. And that turned out to become a major roadblock. And I think this way, I hope we can be more responsive. We can create solutions that delight the users. So that's our goal.
And follow-up for you is, what have you been doing to prepare your teams to go through this process? So what would advice, if we have new customers, other folks, like what would you tell them to do that you've learned in the past couple of months so far?
Well, I think, first of all, don't underestimate the challenge. I think we want to think big, right? So that's why I said we go from 1,000 users to 5,000 users, right? So we want to clearly think enterprise. We don't want to start piecemealing it. I think we've learned a lot over the past, and we want to jumpstart our journey. And we heavily invest into training, obviously. We have internal boot camps that we're organizing. So we're doing a lot of things, and we're working very closely with you guys, and I think it's been very helpful.
Yeah, and for those in the audience, I'll tell you, one of the best things that you can do for Appian implementations in the government, whether you're a partner, whether you're a customer, or a prospect, is, we have trainings that go from a day to 5 days to, the longest training we have is 10 days. It doesn't hurt to go through training, even if you're not doing the implementation yourself. Because frankly, as you mentioned, having an idea, we're asking a lot of business users to say, we might model their current process, and then we say, well, what do you want to automate? And they have no idea how to, to tell us what to automate next. And so, if you can go through training, we have online training, but familiarize yourself with the application, and that way you can work better with the partners that you have. You work better with your contractor, you work better with the other team members, you work better with your management to explain what is possible. But I think if you don't understand the way that the product works, it's very hard to have those types of business dialogues with people doing IT or with people that are coming to Appian World, because they just, otherwise you can't translate. So, yes, that's my plug for Appian Academy. You can go online right now and register. And I'm sure there are people around here who'd be happy to show you that. So let me pull my questions back up here real quick. So Roy, what would you see as, ultimately, and I know you've just started with this and you've gone live with the program, but do you see benefits outside of your internal stakeholders?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, the reason why I said we are the oldest conservation agency in the U.S. is because the mission matters. That's what we are here. I'm not here to build a new product. I'm really here to ensure that the conservation mission of the agency is executed, and that we are a better service provider for the citizens and our partners. So what does that mean from an IT perspective is that we need to get quicker to market in terms with our products or our processes are efficient. So it would cost less. So case in point, if you want to go fish, you got to get a permit if it's in federal waters. Getting the permit is a cumbersome process for our fishers, whether you're recreational fishermen or commercial fishermen, because you don't know where to go to get it. And you may have to get multiple permits. Wouldn't it be great if you could get permits just like you could order an item on Amazon? You just one single stop, and you figure out when you want to go fish and what you're fishing, and you're able to make that purchase, and the back office processes happen automatically using RPAs and natural language process, all those other AI stack that we have readily available. When you do that, when our team is able to do that, we're making a difference in terms of how our citizens experience the services that we provide. That's what I'm here to try to provide.
And June, I'll ask you the same question, because I know your process actually affects folks outside of just the V-Trans.
So just as a follow-up to that, our second process was the right-of-way process by which we acquire property when our existing right-of-way is not sufficient for bridges, new specs, and stuff like that. So it's a permitting process, so that's why the ROI is particularly high on that one. But to your question, so we have, in the first application we built, we have about 50 contractors that are seamlessly a part of the process. So we had a follow-up focus group. They love the application. The comments that came out of that focus group is like, it organizes our relationship with you. Not only is it available 24/7 and it's mobile because they're in the field all the time, but they have, that first application is a construction project closeout. So when everything is built, this is like the field box comes in with all the paper, all the invoices and designs and change orders. And then it's basically a reconciliation. Do they sign off? Do we owe them money? Do they owe us money? Do we owe them money? And that's a process that they, if we owe them money, they want it immediately. But it took 20 months to close that out. We have now gotten it down to 1 to 3 months. Okay, so and it works the other way around. If they owe us money, they're paying up a little bit quicker too. But so it organizes our relationship. For them, unlike the public sector, time is money, and they really want the closeout of these contracts. We use records. We have everything centralized in there, so they just have to go to records. They see everything. Some people are saying this is the only way that we really want to do business with you. Sure. So for us, and the bottom line for the organization is that this really represented one of the first times where we had real credibility. We're coming from a culture, 25 years, where, the government, we're kind of this dispassionate authority where they have to come to us. You want a license, you have to come to us. And, but so, as we get more customer oriented, that's going by the wayside because governments are realizing that, citizens are customers. So the construction contractors were really bowled over. They're like, oh my God, you really care about us. You really, this represents a really good faith effort for you to be making, using your authority and your, to do well by us, to do good. And that was enormous. I mean, we got calls from the secretary saying, what's this about? This is great, so.
And the other kind of side benefit of things like what June just described is, what we've seen and again, in my career in doing government is, when we make it easier for constituents to interact with government, compliance actually goes up, right? So if it's hard, that people just tend to do things that are kind of around the way, versus when it's easy, people will actually comply. So that's a great story. And Hilmar, I know, again, we've kind of put you on the spot here to speculate about all the things in the future, but do you see, how do you see for your the pharmaceutical agencies, the pharmaceutical companies that will interact with CEDAR, do you see any benefits to them over the long haul of the work that you're doing today?
Absolutely. And our work is largely driven by what industry, by the FDA industry interactions, right? Whether they send something in or we've sent something out, there's a continuous back and forth, right? And we definitely see an opportunity to make that interaction a lot more organized and maybe orchestrated, right? Because a lot of things still happen in email or they happen through the electronic submissions gateway, and they're hard to connect, right? So we definitely see a lot of opportunities.
And so one other thing I'll ask for all of you guys, and this is a topic that we always see in our government discussions, is about security and what you've gone through and what you're looking at and things like that. And I'll actually start, Roy, with you. You did that pretty quick. Get to an ATO, in a couple of months, as we all know. That's quick. What are your thoughts on, and we get varying comments from different customers about being in the cloud, but what are your thoughts on cloud security and how building applications on this maybe actually promotes better security in your environments?
I think your security posture will depend not on whether you're on the cloud or on premise, but it's on the architecture and the folks who are operating the security. So be considerate of that. Putting everything on-prem doesn't mean you're going to be secure, and moving to the cloud doesn't mean you're insecure. So it's important that you take a holistic perspective of what you're trying to do and do that analysis and make informed decisions. This was, in our case, this wasn't our first deployment of a low-code platform. So we learned from the previous iteration on what to do. And one of the big takeaways was that as soon as the contract is executed, and maybe even before the contract is executed, preferably during market research phase, you are collecting the security artifacts from the vendors that you're evaluating. If you're having that conversation and they don't understand the security protocols, whether it be FedRAMP and the government, or IL4 on the DoD side, or PCI compliance, whatever it is, if they cannot speak your language, you're going to have a tougher time to put stuff into production. So I think that is the number one advice that I can give you. The other is you need to have a partner who can navigate the entire journey. And last year, this time, I achieved a lifelong goal of hiking up to the Everest Base Camp. I'm not a mountaineer. I'm not an active person, but I wanted to do that, and I always wanted to do that. And the only way I was able to get there was because I had somebody carrying my bag. I had a Sherpa carrying my bag. So prop number one to the Sherpa, because somebody's going to carry the bag. And we had a tour leader who knew the path. If I walked by myself, I would be lost. And it was through a well-navigated path. So I think the low-code journey, especially with cybersecurity consideration, require a partner who knows what they're doing. In our case, Brad and Michelle and the TSPI team, fantastic partner. And in our case, I was also very fortunate with the team lead in Samir Mehta, who did the journey before. He's been there with another platform and knew how to navigate it. So I had this dream of going to the base camp, and my tour group led me. And similarly, I have a vision of 300 apps, migrating a good portion of them to a low-code platform. I need partners who can navigate the journey with me. Otherwise, I'm just dreaming. Sure. I'm not going anywhere.
I'm gonna go to June and to Hilmar for one last question, and then we may have 1 or 2 more minutes for the. Tell me about who does your development work, June.
So the initial development was done by Appian Professional Services, fantastic. And then Architect Solutions is they're the on-demand, they're fantastic. They do everything for me. They are like my navigator, they are right there. And that is so important because it would never have worked without them.
And how do you manage working with them? Do you have a government PM that oversees that project?
No, I do. I mean, I do all the, I manage the program, the entire program. So all the work comes into me, I approve it, I work with them, it works really, really well. As we get bigger, things might have to change or whatever, but.
And Hilmar, I'll ask you this because I know that you're going through this now, is any advice on the room on how to manage lots of contractors in an environment? Everybody laughing is one of the contractors in the environment.
Well, I should maybe ask Kerry and Dave, right? No, I think it's what's really important is be close to the work, invest into building technical expertise in the federal employees. We need to understand what you are doing, and we need to be able to give directions. So we need to really technically be able to do what the contractors do.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that particular question of these three is because that's what they're doing. They're working with partners, or in some cases, they're doing some of the work themselves, but they have invested the time and effort to understand how to manage and know what their contractors are doing. That way, when the contractor proposes something, they may have educated discussions about the approach. And I think that's probably one of the most key lessons, especially from my career doing Appian, and that I've seen in my low-code journey is that. We've got 5 minutes. I'll ask if any questions from the audience. Yes.
One of the themes I heard, I can sit down. One of the themes I heard about the success of your project was the collaboration between IT and the business. If we think about the earlier phases of the initiative, even before the start of the project, or even before acquisition, what advice would you give to your counterparts at other government agencies to get the buy-in of the low-code approach across your organization, the buy-in from senior leadership, buy-in from the user community? How do you get folks to kind of follow your lead in that vision even before you even buy any software?
I would say change the conversation. We shouldn't be having a conversation about low code or no code. That's my perspective. You should have a conversation about the business problem that you need to solve and how soon the business is ready for the results associated with it. And you would almost always get the answer, we need it tomorrow, right? And those of us who have been developing in this space, we know we've been struggling to develop solutions for our business partners as quick as possible with every tool possible, right? So I think we're very aligned when you're talking about outcome-based conversation. So you talk about the outcome you're looking for. Then you have the conversation about the behaviors that will result in the outcome. And engage them in that conversation and make them part, and that behavior should include evaluation of the platform that will lead you to the promised land, right? So if we do that, I think we have a higher chance of success. And just a quick aside, our business team helped pick this product that this application is on. They had picked a different product prior, but we had this conversation. They came to us and said, we'd like to do this on this platform X. I said, we were able to have this informed conversation about what are you trying to do, and let's see what's out there and what's the best fit. Now they're the ones telling us this is the best experience they've had in the 20-some years they've been in the agency. And the agency head is telling us, how did this happen? It's easy.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. So I am also in the federal workforce, and I think this may be for Roy. So you had mentioned earlier that you're planning to move 300 applications. I think you had said to a low-code solution. As we all know... Oh, sorry. What I heard was, there we go. As we all know, you got to spend money to make money. So what is your elevator speech when you're presenting this to your leadership to allocate the resources to maybe move something away from a solution that works to something that works better?
Yeah, I think that is the most challenging conversation about making the ROI conversation, especially for business processes that work. That's been on legacy platform for a long time, and the friction associated with transition to a new platform is pretty high. So I think, again, I like to have the conversation about the future, right? We're talking about managing fisheries in a way where we do science differently, because our science folks been working their tail off with limited resource for a long time. I think part of my job is to figure out a way to be more efficient in some of the business processes so that we can reinvest in the science. because that's what drives the conservation mission and the stewardship mission of the agency. So that's the conversation we're having. So we have 300 plus apps built and supported all over the country. I don't need to convince anybody that's inefficient. I just lighting a sunshine on that was the eye opener last year. I was able to do it. Say, this is what you have in the enterprise. Anybody think that's efficient? Nobody thinks it's efficient. Now we're developing a path forward, and I hope we will get a significant number of them onto a platform, a local platform. I don't think we'll get to 100%. I don't think we should get to 100%. That's a different conversation.
So we are at our time.
We have time for
One more? Yes.
Question is for June. As a BPM evangelist for Vermont and an expert in Appian, what's your vision for Appian for Vermont, and can your solutions be repeatable for other states?
Thank you. I'll answer that by also answering the first gentleman's question. So the first thing that you need is to get a sponsor that's got his or her hands on the purse strings, and that's strategic and understands the systemic issues, because this is not one application. This is a journey, right? So in Vermont, we're at the agency level. My next step, honestly, is to have a conversation with the CTO of the state of Vermont, centralized. And because it just doesn't, it needs to be on a bigger scale. It needs to be, this is gonna the idea is to bring a transformation, not just to the agency, because it's hard sometimes to do at the agency level. There's a lot more power and a lot more, honestly, talking with technology people, they get this. When you're talking to business folks, not so much. So I'm gonna really make a pitch to the CTO and to try to get them to understand that there is really no other way. We have an opportunity to leapfrog ourselves, right? The legacy stuff has not worked, and a lot of the people that have created the situation that we're in now. We have 324 applications. In the 13 years I've been there, that's 100 more. It's crazy, So Appian, one of my favorite Appian slides from former show is the one with the little tiles that shows that Appian can be a standalone. It can be the glue behind, in between a lot of applications, a lot of legacy applications, new applications, and it can also be used to sunset. So it's like the full.
We've trained her well.
It's like the full.
We've trained her very well.
And that is a really good way at looking at how strategically Appian can fit and can transform at the agency level, at the state level. Thanks for that question.
And just last, Hilmar, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
There's a lot to learn for me, so it was a pleasure to be here. Took the risk.
Thank you so much.
I survived.
So my parting note is, just to show further our commitment to the government, we have rented an aircraft carrier for our party tonight. So if you're doubting our commitment to the government, that should show. Tomorrow we have another great session. We have GSA and Federal Transit Administration speaking. That will be in more of a presentation format. They'll be going through some of the lessons learned on their projects about how to make mission critical applications. We'll also be doing a Q&A with those speakers. So hope to see you tomorrow, 11:20. Thank you very much.